Welcome, everybody. My name is E.R. Anderson. I'm the executive director of Charis Circle, and I'm joined tonight by Dartricia Rollins and Sierra King. We are here for a conversation about how to read art in literature and read literature in art and so many other things. A little bit of cross-disciplinary ideas, and I think we're all going to learn a lot. So I want to introduce formally our two speakers tonight. First, we have Sierra King. Sierra is an Atlanta-based artist, photographer, and archivist. Her creative and arts administration work is dedicated to documenting, preserving, and archiving the work of Black women artists. She is currently building and preserving the archives of the Eldridge and Kathleen Cleaver family, printmaker Jasmine Williams, director Ebony Blanding, and multidisciplinary artist Rochelle Sodipo. Sierra holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree in art from the Valdosta State University, and she is currently the community manager for Tila Studios, a visual arts incubator for Black women artists. So welcome, Sierra. And we're joined, of course, tonight by Dartricia Rollins, Charis's very own assistant director of fundraising and administration, as well as a bookseller for Charis Books. Dartricia holds a bachelor's degree in human services and a minor in gender and women's studies. She is an art and book collector and a reproductive justice advocate. She's a board of trustee for the Bloom Fund, a micro grant fund for Black, Indigenous, and other people of color centered around the arts, as well as an advisory board member of Been Here, Been Queer, a book project for queer millennial and Gen Z change makers in the margins. So I'm really excited for this conversation. I know everyone in the audience is going to learn a lot. I want to let folks know who are watching at home that you are welcome to chime in the chat, say where you're watching from, talk about your favorite books, your favorite art, clap back, share whatever you want to say in the chat. And then you also have an ask a question button in sort of the bottom part of your screen. That's where if you have a specific question for either Dartricia or Sierra that you really want them to answer, put that there. You can put that in there at any time. It's not disruptive. So even if they're talking, just go ahead and put it in so that when they're ready to take audience questions, there'll be a few in there. And then finally, you'll see this teal button, click to shop the curator's bookshelf. The point of this event is that there are books that have informed this conversation and this dialogue, and we want you to have access to those books. So if you click that button, you'll go directly to the amazing bookshelf where you can purchase all of those books, or a few of them anyway, from Charis Books and more. So we hope that you'll enjoy exploring during this time and enjoy this multimedia presentation. Thanks so much.
Yay. Thank you so much, ER, for that introduction. And welcome. Very excited. Hi, Sierra. I am great. Also, your friend Gambino is here, and it looks like he's ready to start barking, so I apologize in advance. He's a very deep and loud bark. So yeah, ER is going to start a presentation for us to just kind of help guide us and guide y'all through this conversation, and it's gonna be great. Sierra and I are homies, so we got a lot to talk about.
Yes, I am excited. We've been talking about this for like 3 years now, so it's good to have a formal conversation happen.
Yes. So I guess we should start. Because we're in conversation for Sierra's curatorial debut, Here, There, Everywhere at Mint Gallery. So Sierra, do you want to kind of lead us into a bit of an introduction about the show?
Yeah, so the show is Here, There, Everywhere at Mint currently. It's a show about the pursuit of Black women going towards Black Futurity. And it showcases the work of 11 Black women artists that I have come in contact with and had relationships with within the last 3-4 years. And so I just honor their work and wanted to make space for that, to have this conversation in this particular time.
Awesome. So I guess we should go into our Bible and our just favorite feminist thought leader, whatever you want to call her, academic, Bell Hooks. And she's kind of like the foundation for a lot of these thoughts that we share and we have been like theorizing around for literature and art.
Sorry, do y'all hear my dog? Sunday?
Yes.
It's okay. She'll be okay.
We're in your house.
Yes, y'all are in my house. But yes, Bell Hooks is, I think that art on my mind. That for me was one of the first like literary texts that I came across when I was looking for Black women artists when I was in college. And so I came across that book and like read maybe an essay or two out of it. And then it kind of like disappeared, and I was just like reading stuff from her and watching online mostly. But it came back up in my life around maybe like 3-4 years ago when I started working with Tila. And I shared the book with Dartricia. And when we wanted to, I guess, she wanted to know more about art. And I was like, this is the book. This is the only book that you need to read. And she read it. I still haven't read all of it, but she read all of it. And I guess what were like some of your favorite parts of that book?
I guess I want to start with, and ER, if you'll go to the next slide, that actually is the full quote that I think will ground us. And if y'all don't mind, I will actually read it. So if you have a copy of Art on My Mind, it's page 96. And it says, to begin with, artists have to engage in a process of education that encourages critical consciousness and enables them as individuals to break the hold of colonizing representations. Once the process is completed, they then have a space to map a new terrain, one that can emerge only from an imaginative inventiveness, since there is no body of images, no tradition to draw on. Concurrently, even after the images are in place, the art world may lack a critical language to speak to the complexities these images invoke. And there were a few essays in this book. So that is from Art on My Mind, Visual Politics by Bell Hooks. Yeah, there are a few essays that like you, Sierra, kind of like introduced me to, and were like, there's one that I have like highlighted, put an asterisk, underlined it, but it's In Our Glory, Photography and Black Life. And that is the one that Sierra was like, you have to read it because my favorite line is in that essay.
It is.
And I know, it's become like my favorite. I think so, you know, Art on My Mind does a really good job at kind of getting to like the meat of like why, like the book is centered around Black people. And so it really does get to like why Black people should be engaging with visual arts. And Bell Hooks is a writer. And so I was really interested because like I like her writing, that she was writing about visual arts. And so, and she's a feminist, you know, writer. And so she talks about like women artists and a creative process and like just identifying gender and how that shows up in art. And a couple of the other ones, and I won't go all the way into this, but The Poetics of Soul, Art for Everyone, really is my favorite because she talks about and acknowledges class. And I remember when I was first like coming into art, or like coming into like being interested in art, it really did feel classist. Like I felt like I couldn't go to museums. I'm like, what do I wear to a museum? I felt like I couldn't go to a gallery because it was like, what do I wear? I don't actually have money to pay for this, but I really do want to see it. And I think something that she really does well, and Sierra, I think you speak really well about this, is in Our Glory, she talks about how like Black people have already been curating art spaces in their homes. And like we don't necessarily need to go to museums. Like we know our hearts, we know our art, and we've been doing it and we've been making it, and it's been hanging on our grandmother's wall. And like that was like really, really foundational for me. That I've read that essay so many times just off the strength of you.
I know. I guess that essay was more of it was more of her like informal ones outside of the other ones. Like she really put like a personal touch inside of that one. Like you could see the photographs that she was talking about, like specifically the one like with her dad, where like and she was comparing the photo, how her and her sister had two different ideals about the photograph. So she was like, this is the best photograph of her dad, and her sister was like, she didn't like looking at her dad in that particular way. Like I think he had like a wife beater on, and it just showed a lot more of his skin than she was like normally used to seeing. And her sister, like, she didn't want to see him in that way, which was funny. And so those like little antidotes allowed you to kind of like really get into like her personal life and how photographs, specifically in her grandmother's homes, just helped her come into who she was as an artist and as a writer. And specifically for me, I think that gave me a lot of vocabulary around how I thought about the photographs in my grandmother's home, and how I like came to understanding that that was like one of the first galleries that I walked into. Her walls, just her floor to ceilings were full of photographs, and they just happened to be of our family. And you would like see our cousins, and you would see new babies pop up and kids that she cared for. And so just reading that essay put a lot of that into perspective, and to that point of giving me words as an artist to have context for that. And I think when I understood that for myself as an artist, I was able to give that to others and be able to give that to you. Is that like, it's not necessarily you have to read the whole book, but like the parts of the book that resonate with you can give you the confidence to speak about your work more clearly and have more conversations about it, I think is really the goal for that.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you and thank you, because and I think we'll move into this part of the conversation of like how we started to actually practice the things that we were interested in, like my being interested in like learning more about art, your interest in like wanting to read more. So we should talk about Friends Dinner, which I see that KSA Layman is in the chat, which we invited him to Friends Dinner, and post quarantine we'll have you at my house. So yeah, let's talk about Friends Dinner and how that came about, and like how it has like served us in this art and reading practice.
Yeah, I think we were talking about it yesterday a little bit when how it was just something that happened over the internet at first, where like you were just sharing photos of like the food that you were preparing on Instagram, and I was like, I want some, and you said, well, just come get it. And like and also I think we were just understanding that like we lived closer together than like, because we were always like meeting in the city in Atlanta. We actually lived closer together outside the perimeter. And so that kind of also helped like forge that friendship to like, oh, I have someone that's like out here with me, and I can go eat and go do things and not have to go all the way to the city to do it. And so that turned into like us having dinner and then inviting Jasmine, and Dewan just happened to be there because he's your husband.
that reminds me how I kind of like how I kind of spoke that into existence. Like in 2018, I was doing this journaling practice with the Press Pause journal, and the other part of that was like there was like a prompt, and it was like, name 3 people or something you want to have dinner with, and I wrote Sierra. Like, I want to have dinner with Sierra. And I was writing in this physical journal, but then showing it and posting it on my Instagram stories. And I just like tagged you. Like, I want to have dinner with Sierra. And then like I had already cooked this meal and Sierra was like, I want you to make me that. I think it was like a pasta dish. And I was like, I'll make it, just come over. And that really did just like push us like into this friendship, because I also had claimed you as my friend and you were like, I'm not really looking for any new friends. And I was like, but I want you to be my friend.
I closed all friend applications after you.
You also like closed the friends dinner application.
I did.
Like it's real exclusive.
It was a secret meeting.
I mean, Sierra like literally told someone we didn't have enough chairs.
We don't.
We don't have enough chairs. I'm gonna get some folding chairs. But you know, friends dinner really was a space for us to like, we put it on our calendar and we made a decision that like it's on the calendar, it's not movable. So like don't plan anything else for this day, like for this time. And we're gonna cook. I'm gonna cook, maybe Jasmine's gonna cook, and we're gonna talk. Like we're gonna talk about all the things that we maybe don't have enough space and time to talk about on a regular. And we were like really honoring the fact that we were busy and like maybe we can't always respond to each other's text messages, but like friends dinner is where we're gonna show up. We're gonna talk about all the books that we're reading. We're gonna talk about the galleries and the exhibitions that we're gonna go to. And I think that leads us into how you even started our joint calendar.
Yeah, and yeah, the calendar was like a 2 a.m. project that I like started because as y'all know, also I work for Tila Studios, so I have to like one of my jobs is to just figure out like where the exhibitions and galleries are and where the work is and where artists are showcasing their work. And so I just had this really long list of like galleries and then like had to kind of research their opening and like closing dates and things like that. But then also realizing that like everyone for some reason in Atlanta schedules on the same night. And so like you would literally be going from like starting at 6 p.m. when you got off of work to like 10 p.m. and you'd be going to like 5 shows just because they all wanted to open on the same night. As you can see, I think on like January 14th, it was like 400, a curator's talk and something else. But so I have made that calendar and that, and you can share them in Google Calendar. You can add people to it. So it was just on everybody's calendar who want to sign up for it. And of course, Dartricia was like the first person to sign up. And she was like, yeah, we can just go to all the shows.
I mean, I love a Google Calendar.
That I was like, this is not that's not possible, but we can try it. And so outside of friends dinner committing to that, we also like committed to actually going out with each other. I think that's when like we started going out and to the gallery runs and doing things with each other, including Jasmine and Delon.
Yes, but like not, and so yes, like the gallery run calendar, but Sierra, you also created like our own friends calendar, our niggas got hobbies calendar. So like it was just me, you, and Jasmine, and we put on there assigned readings. I think we like assign each other to like journal every night. We assigned, that's where we put like that's where we put our friends dinner schedule and all the other things that we like made sure that we wanted to like hold each other accountable for. And also the things that we wanted to make sure that we didn't miss, that we wanted to do outside of the house as a group.
I think that was like the game changer, was the like really the shared calendar, because we would forget if it hadn't been on there. And even when we didn't do the things like journal or read, it was like we would still text the group and be like, are y'all journaling? And we say no, but thanks for asking.
Yes, I agree. And so I think we can talk about like what the gallery runs meant to us, and like how that then kind of informed our reading. And I can speak to this a little bit more. So the photos that are on this presentation are from the High Museum exhibition of Romare Bearden. And I think I went to that exhibition 5 times because I was like obsessed. And like I took a book there. I think I took Allison there. Allison is in the chat when she came here from DC. I took everybody. I got a High Museum pass for the low, and I spent like all of January at the High Museum pre-pandemic. And some of the things that came up for me from going to see that show was there was like a piece of art in there named like Conjure Woman. And at the time I was reading this book, Conjure Women. And so I think that was like part of the reason why I kept going back, because I like went and just like sat at that piece and I was like reading that book, and like I took the book with me and just like sat on one of the benches and like read it and looked at that piece of art. And that was kind of like one of the first connections that I started to make. And it was just like, it was an easy connection. Yeah. And, you know, something else that we were kind of talking about in the chat with ER, but also these poets created this book. I want to say it's Bearden's Odyssey. And they're poets responding to Romare Bearden's body of work. And that was like another like really easy like identifier for me, where like there are writers who were thinking about and looking at art and like responding to art, and like how can I find more of that? And that has led me to actually doing that research. And so Sierra, I want to know like how did you practice reading last year?
Well, I guess first to think about the gallery runs and how like I responded to them mostly. I think the Romare Bearden exhibition helped me think a lot about how an exhibition was curated. And so like he had like small details like the titles and things, and the descriptions were like the vinyl was in cursive, and like to like mirror his handwriting, like it came out of his notes. And then also it was like paired with a film. And so I think for that exhibition for me was just the smaller details in what an exhibition could be, or a retrospective could be. And then seeing you connect those things was also like gratifying. Like I didn't have to like tell you anything about like how to like think about the art or how to look at it. You just kind of made your own connections from like a year of reading. So that was like also gratifying. But I think from then, or at least like from Friends Dinner and like doing the gallery runs, I just always had books in my car. Like I'm always like driving and always like in transition from places. So even in that bag right there, I probably had art on my mind in there, just because like, oh, I can read it like for 2 seconds.
I think you had like 6 books. I think you always have like 6 books in your bag. And as someone with a bad back, with chronic back pain, I'm like, how are you carrying all those books? Put one in there. You can't read 6 books at one time.
I'm reading them all at the same time for different reasons. Like I'm reading like smaller pieces of them, and then you never know when you need either one of them. So like, yeah, I think my practice of reading is very like one that's like in transition. I'm never like tied down to one particular book. I'm like always like reading different pieces at a time. I think one time y'all were trying to read like Morgan Parker, Magical Negro.
Yeah.
And I was just reading that at stoplights. And to get through it, like if I just leave it in the car and like read at stoplights, maybe I can get through it. And that was like the practice that I was like having at that time. And I think because I'm not a habitual reader either, like I know you sit down and you actually like make time to read like certain days. and 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 I don't like I just don't. And so it's like I have to read when like I have those like little pockets of time, even at stoplights, Dewan, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Whenever I'm carrying like my backpack, I usually keep like a nonfiction, a fiction, and poetry with me. And I am someone
Mm.
who will like I'll be standing in line somewhere and I'll just pull out a book because it's always a good time to read. And so I do like that about you, that because I am someone who often gets bogged down with like I need to finish this book. Like
Mm.
I can't start anything else because I need to finish this before I can move on to the next. And you're just like, I read one line from Saeed Jones's book.
And it changed my life. It changed my life.
And I'm gonna spend a month just thinking about like that one line. I'm gonna read
That's
this
all I needed.
here, where I'm like, now I gotta read this cover to cover because then I gotta take this photo and post it on my Instagram. And when people
No.
ask me about books, I need to be able to tell them what I read.
I give you, yeah, I'm definitely a one-line reader. That is a part of my practice. But as you can see, that is what my bookshelf looked like. My books are now in the closet, but it was on a shoebox.
So like let's talk about the books that are here because we already talked about Art of My Mind as being like that text for us. But the other book that we really bonded over, and I actually think it was the first book that we even talked about at Friends Dinner, was Pearl Clegg's Things I Should Have Told My Daughter. And Pearl Clegg lives in Atlanta. I am obsessed with her. I still have not met her, even though she is like, she's been to Charis. Like she has done many, many events, readings, loves Charis, wrote about Charis in Things I Should Have Told My Daughter. And I have not met her. And
It's
post
on the way.
quarantine, we're gonna make it happen. It's on the way. So yeah, we can talk about like the practice of reading, and we don't have to talk about like me putting reading on your schedule because we all know that you were only going to read one journal entry.
That was the same too. It was like that book became more like a devotional. Like if you're like thinking about devotionals where you can just like flip through it and like just read based on the dates. And so that's kind of how I used it. It was like if I woke up and I was like, it's July 16th. Let me go see what Pearl was doing in 1971. And that's how I like used it and read it. And that became like at least for me, because we were also like thinking about how journaling and documenting our lives was important and how we could do that like individually. Like how can I find my own voice within my journal so that like if I did want to pass it down like Pearl did, that it could turn into something like this. And I think that's a good like manuscript or something to kind of just get you started or see how you can like build your voice inside of your own space, because I think a lot of what were combating like in the last like 2 years was that like the digital spaces were becoming like really overwhelming. And so creating our own space in our journals and our own spaces within like dinners and things like that just became important for us. And like while we weren't like consistent with it, it was like everything else, like it became like a practice that we were like generally aware of.
And I think things I should have told my daughter prompted me to quit my job at the bank. Like that book was like, she was talking about working for the mayor of Atlanta, and like how it wasn't serving her anymore. And she was like, I want to be a writer. She's like, I'm a poet. Like, I'm a playwright. I do these things. Why am I wasting my time here where I'm like, it's not serving me. And yeah, I immediately like figured out how I could quit. I went to go work at Charis full time. Like that book really was transformational for me. And it was like the practice of reading that, coming to the understanding that like, no, like cultural work and the arts was really important to me. So like reading like the theory of art on my mind and like really understanding that like I could actually do all the things that I wanted to do. Like I could actually like love art, love books, and like make some money, like make enough money to like live off of. I'm not gonna be rich, you know, being a bookseller, but it's good for my heart. I feel good about going to work. I did not feel good about going to work at the bank. And so, you know, Proclaim talks about that. And then like us like having the practice of like writing it in our journal and then talking about it. And like y'all just like being like, so when you gonna quit? When you gonna put in your notice? Like when we gonna do these things? So yeah, like those books, friends dinner, going to the galleries, all were incredibly helpful, I think, to like my life, our friendship, all of it.
Yeah, those two books were definitely 2018 like top 5.
Yes, we made everybody buy those books. Like if you ever if you talk to me any and everywhere, it was like, make sure that you've read Art on My Mind. Are you an artist? Are you interested in the arts? Read Art on My Mind. Have you read The Good Word of Pearl Clay? Buy this book. So yeah, I think this leads us to the work in actual practice with Here, There, Everywhere.
Yeah. I think I didn't really come to a realization that it took us like 3 years to get here, like 3 years to actually like mount this exhibition, based on like the research, but it definitely like came to mind when like all of the work was up, and it was like the day before the show, and I was like, wow, it took 3 years to get here, and 3 years of reading and writing and going to friends dinner, and like just, and then also when I was able to like talk about Jasmine's piece, Everything I Am, that piece came out of friends dinner, and just our cultivating our relationship with each other, and so that was like the narrative I got to speak about and still able to speak about when people come into the gallery, is that like this lead piece is about our relationship and how Black women create relationships with each other, to kind of help build that community within themselves, to see, I guess, to see visions beyond what their current reality is. And so like when you were speaking towards like quitting the bank or quitting your job or moving into a different space, you weren't able to see that or have like a vision to do that until you had people that you were like okay with and vulnerable with to be able to talk about it and be able to make that like quick decision, because that's what like I guess moving towards like Black Futurity is just a string of decisions that you're making with your community and for your community, and I think once, even though the years prior, like I was doing all of this work, I didn't really have the words to put to it. So going back to having the confidence to talk about what exactly you're doing and how Bell Hook's saying like you're doing these things and having and making the work per se, but you don't necessarily have the words to contextualize it with. And so when I came to this point in this year and wanting to curate this exhibition, that's what I asked for help with Dartricia, to find the rest of the words.
Yes, and that we did. We did that, which leads us to research for your practice, which is something that I don't know who came up with this phrase. I think it was you. But when you called me, we were like a couple months into quarantine, and I was like carrying like a lot of stress. Like work was busy because, you know, an independent bookstore who, you know, we sell our books in store. Like we don't, that's what you get when you shop at an independent bookstore. Like you come inside, you get to talk to booksellers, and you get to like ask our opinions and just have conversations, and you get to have this community. And we were trying to recreate that community online, which I think ER did a phenomenal job with, mostly because ER was thinking about COVID January. Like he was planning in January and did this really quick, you know, turnaround of like, okay, Crowdcast is like which is the platform we're on tonight. Like Crowdcast is like where I've already did the research. But anyways, I was like in this like quarantine fog of like working a lot. And then I had, you know, my niece Mackenzie, who I was caring for, and I wasn't really talking to my friends. And then we didn't have that monthly friends dinner on our calendar to kind of like get me back in my bag, where it's like, okay, even though I've been busy 29 days out of this month, on the 30th day, we got friends dinner. I didn't have that. And so I wasn't really, you know, texting y'all back. We weren't talking as much. And I think I needed to talk to you about something. And you were like, well, I'm thinking about like doing this proposal for Mint, but it's due in like 2 days. And I don't know if I have enough time. And I was like, oh, we got time. It was like, it was the middle of the workday, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna finish up these couple things for Charis, and then like we're gonna call each other back on FaceTime, and we just gonna like socially distance and do this work that we would normally do, you know, in person at my house. And we did it. I mean, it was like you already kind of had this idea of what you wanted to do from what you said, like your research and your reading and you're working with Black women artists, but not just like Black women artists, but like, you know, we were talking last night about like identity politics and like how it's become like distorted. And it wasn't just like, oh, these women are Black, so I'm choosing them to be in my show. It was like how do they show up in the world? And like, what are the things that we share, like politically, that like makes their work speak to me and speak to like what I want this show to be. And I think we were on FaceTime for like 7 hours planning this proposal. And then like the next morning, me just like pulling out all the books that, you know, I thought related to the show and just like finding the words to help, you know, shape like the statement for the show. So, I mean, if you want to talk a little bit more about like how we came to like the proposal and like came to even like choosing the work.
Yeah, so I guess I had, for quarantine, I had like just been on like a book haul and had found the researcher and the scholar Tina Camp. And so I got her books, mostly her books from Duke University Press, and bought way too many things. But the two books that I did get were, I was reading Image Matters and Listening to Images. And in that particular book, in Listening to Images, it talked about, I really love language too. That's like also like a footnote, is I love language and how people like apply the grammatical tenses to their work. And so that's where she particularly talked about it. And I guess I can read it because it's like one of my favorite things. The grammar of Black feminist futurity is a performance of a future that hasn't yet happened but must. It is an attachment to a belief in what should be true but impels us to realize that aspiration. It is the power to imagine beyond current fact and to envision that which is not but must be. And I like had to sit with that for like 5 days to like, because it was just like, this makes all of the sense. Like I'm just going like, not only all the sense in like the particular art that I was looking at, but all the sense in like how I was like structuring and designing my own life, was that like, regardless of like what was being thrown at me, regardless of like the circumstances that were happening in my life, I was still like going like full force at this like art practice and in like arts administration and photography, because I had some kind of vision for what that must particularly was. And I think that relates to all Black women, whereas that like they have a vision for their life and a vision for like their community, and the future no longer becomes something that is up to chance. It's going to happen, even if they aren't willing to see it. Like, it's still going to happen because they made those decisions, they made those choices to continue to go after it. And Tina Camp and Sadia Hartman speak about that in tandem, to where it's like, she gives like the grammar tense, and then Sadia Hartman comes and we'll give you the picture of it, and we'll give you the archival sources and give you these narratives of women. In particular, I like the narrative that she talks about. Her name is Esther Brown, and she is she was just a Black queer woman in the 1920s, and she would work, and then she wouldn't work because she didn't want to. And then it was like a particular line in there speaking about how she was going in between these different jobs, as not because like she didn't want to have the job, it was because she was making decisions to, like, I don't want to be a washerwoman, so I'm gonna go be something else, and I'm gonna go be something else until I figure out like what it is that like I'm after, or I'm not gonna work for 6 months because I'm not in the business of serving anybody. And just that, those type of women like making those like bold statements about their lives and like what they want to do, is something that I've always like wanted to embody. And I think that like within the show, I wanted to give like a voice to all of that and all of those different like embodiments of like how Black women go after like their own particular freedoms in their life.
Mm-hmm. And I think, so the books that are pictured here are Alexis Pauline Gumbs and M. Jackie Alexander. On the next slide are the books that Sierra was just speaking about. But I guess like where I even came in at the beginning of quarantine, I brought you a copy of M Archive. And when we were even talking about this proposal and like how we were going to shape it and how we were going to shape this show, because Sierra did from A to Z. She didn't just send a proposal. She chose the pieces, the artists, the order of the show, the everything, the programming. Like, we had this program planned in May with the proposal. So you came with all the pieces, and you were reading M Archive, which, I've read all of Alexis Pauline Gumbs' work. She is like someone who, she grew up at Charis. And so when you were telling me what you had read from the book, I was like, ooh, yeah. And so like M Archive also, so it's In Conversation with Pedagogies of Crossing by M. Jackie Alexander. But you didn't have Pedagogies of Crossing. So you would read something, you would read a line to me, and then I would pick up Pedagogies of Crossing, and I'm like, here is the full excerpt. And I think that is like really what projected me into like, okay, I'm gonna do the research because I have like all the books here, and you focus on the art because that's what you know best, because I can't speak to the art, but I can speak to these books. And like, how can we divide and conquer so we can make sure we get this proposal done in time? And I think it was just like that. And because I think pre-quarantine, we had spent so much time together, and we had spent so much time talking about art, talking about books, talking about like what our friendship meant to us, what like, Black girlhood, Black womanhood, like what all these things meant to us. It was easy for us to like do this work separately and then come back and put the pieces together. And Alexis does some really amazing experimental work. One of my friends and I were talking about like, who are these publishers that are like letting this Black woman just like have this full creativity? It's amazing. I will never forget the first time I heard her read Spill at Charis when it first got published. And so, we just like, I think I just like you read across some of these books, and then I was just dropping lines in our shared Google Doc. And it really just came together like that way. And I think it's really helpful if we actually just like provide some context for the people with some of the actual art pieces and the artists and yeah, like the whole show as it's presented now.
So yeah, the artists that I chose for this show, I joke around that I have like a Rolodex of like Black women artists in my head, and I just need to put it somewhere. And so this particular exhibition was a place that I put it. And first and foremost, I chose these women because of their craftsmanship and their commitment to their to their discipline. They understand what their medium can do, and they understand how to refine it in ways that not only speaks to them making the work, but also speaks to why they're making the work. And so me as an arts administrator, that is like the first thing that I'm looking for, is that like you're committed to your craft to a point that like the presentation of your work is down to the T. And so I held that standard up to them to be able to do that. And so I also wanted to, when looking at the call for the proposal, they were like, they challenged us to think about a range of disciplines. And so not only presenting just one discipline, while I would love to do a all photography show because we're awesome, but I wanted to also showcase different mediums across that these Black women were working in. And so I've had relationships with them as far as working with them or seeing them come through TILA or within within the city or different shows. Like I remember the piece that's in there for Sierra, that's your piece, because you bought it at the John Creeks Arts Center show,
Yes.
like 2 Februarys ago. And so that's Sierra piece, and that was the first time that I met Sierra, and I was like, I don't know what you're doing right now, but you need to like come into the city and meet other Black women artists and just be in community with them so that your practice can continue to grow. And Sierra has been made tremendous strides as far as she's also been an intern at Mint and done some other things in the city. And then of course Jasmine, I know and work closely with Jasmine all the time. I'm basically her archivist. I mean, I am her archivist and her
Yes,
studio manager. And so I work with her closely. Alex, she's came through Tila as well. And then Ebony, I've done some photography for her and just always loved her film work and what she's done there. And Talk to Plants was just a really pivotal moment in her career, as far as her stepping out and doing that on her own. For photography, Rita and Latrice, I haven't worked with them, but they were they were photographers that I was looking at because you don't necessarily see Black women photographers either working in film or in documentary a lot. You usually see them in editorial or commercial. So I wanted to give an eye to that. I don't know why Stephanie. Why isn't your name here, Stephanie? Because I see you on the comments right there, but it should be under photography. That's definitely an error. But Stephanie Brown is also photography in here. And I apologize about your name missing, but she's definitely one that is to watch. Specifically in the new series that she's working in with portraiture and nude, and that's the piece that's up in Mint. And then Toya, she is non-binary, but also has a lens on Black women and queer women and depicting them in their own right. And then Jasmine and Chandler, they both work in site-specific installations, and that is its own thing, figuring out. And I'm glad that I was able to explore what that was for them in the space. And I think I came to this like the actual like a aha moment last night when we were talking about that particular quote by Sadia Hartman that is in The Chorus Opens the Way. Can you go to the next slide, ER? Because I can't read it. If you listen closely, you can hear the whole world in a bent note, a throwaway lyric, a singular thread of the collective utterance. And I was just like, this makes so much sense like 24 hours ago. Like the featured artist is the chorus. Like they are the chorus that make up all of the voices of these collective women and this song that we're singing. While they may have different voices and different depictions of what Black women are, when it's being sung together, you can still hear like the different ones from them. So I think this particular quote speaks to the artist as a whole and the artist individually. And I'm glad I was able to showcase them and their work in that way.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that answer. Because I feel like, obviously you and I have been talking a lot about this, but like I don't think I've ever heard you explain it that way. And yeah, that the chorus opens the way. That quote just like last night blew us away.
Like
And
literally
also
last night.
like thinking about like the social media research that you do and how, and I know we're not talking about music, but like we're talking about art and like how you do such an amazing job with like, if anybody has ever seen Sierra's Instagram stories, she loves to put like church choirs. And I'm like not in the church, but every once in a while I'll go listen to the Mississippi Mass Choir because that was like my favorite as a kid. And Sierra will like curate these amazing videos of like these old Black women in these church choirs singing. And I think that was like another thing that came up for us when we were talking and planning this presentation today. Like you're doing all the things and you may not always know. And I think that's also like that brings back up like research for your practice. Like you don't always have the words, but like you're doing the work. You've been, finding these videos. You've been like paying attention to these artists. You've been thinking about all these different things. And like all we have to do is read one line from a book.
I'm a one-line reader.
The one line, and that just like encapsulated everything that like we didn't know how to say, or we didn't know that like like we didn't know how to like fully articulate that, and someone has already done it, so we don't need to. All we have to do is cite them.
Credit. Give
and
them
it's
credit.
done.
All the credit.
Give them all the credit. Cite Black women.
Yes.
And the work is already done. And I think that also I don't think we really like talked about this earlier with the Bell Hooks quote, but yeah, like the whole part of like researching for your practice is like there's a lot of people who have been theorizing for years about some of these like same things, and a lot of people often think that they just had like this new bright idea, but I'm like, if you actually just like go and look back. And I kind of just been like thinking of this thread of like these like Black feminists, like the Combahee River Collective, like Kimberly Crenshaw and like intersectionality, the Combahee River Collective and their statement about like identity politics. And then like Claudia Jones, a Black radical communist in a day, and in some earlier days, like her even talking about like identity politics and intersectionality, and like how like when Black women get free, like we all get free. And so some of those things come up when you go and actually do that research and read about the things that you are wanting to create. It's already been said, and all you have to do is like quote it, cite it, and then build upon it. And add what you're gonna add to like fully articulate your point. So I think it'll be helpful for us to move towards the mission statement, because that is like the whole shaping of the show that was born out of our research.
Yeah. I guess should I read it in full or?
I think you can. I mean, it's up to you. People can also read it themselves.
I think the statement that we put in the proposal is different from the statement that's like in the press release and on the wall text. So I'll go ahead and read it. This one just goes a bit more into the like what the actual portrait like is. So here, there, everywhere is a multi-dimensional portrait of the journey that Black women across the African diaspora have been in pursuit of in the name of freedom. They stepped out of the roles as caretakers, teachers, and wives and wandered into the working class, dancers, shakers, and artists. Here they are resisting and refusing to be governed by societal norms, class structures, gender roles, and constructs within racism. They are reckoning with and acknowledging that the reality that they are living in can't be altered, but more so, there's an opportunity to alter and evolve themselves. Accepting the risk of loss in the name of freedom, they employ new routines of self-exploration, community building, and visualization while imagining a future that has not yet arrived.
And if you've read Wayward Lives, which the full title of that book says it all: Wayward Lives, Beautiful Experiments, Intimate Histories of Righteous Black Girls, Troublesome Women, and Queer Radicals. Like, I don't know if anybody else sees it, but like I see the connection. And I think that that artist statement for the show, I've not read anything like it. Also, because I'm your friend, I'm always your cheerleader. But like, Sierra is brilliant, y'all. And I just need y'all to understand this. So let's go into the work, because the work is, and we only chose a few pieces. So if there's some artists in here, you're like, how come my work is not represented? We want people to actually be able to see it, and we don't want to just give it all away. But speak to the installation here that's pictured.
So Chandler and Jasmine did an installation collaboration on site, and which merged their two pieces together. Chandler did the on-site mural coded, which is like the transitional pathway there, and then Jasmine sent her tapestry of braided hair down from New York. And so that the braided hair actually led into a box, led you like, I guess it was like you walked towards like the right of it. So it would lead you into the rest of her work. But this particular piece, they named it Coded, and they were thinking about how we as Black women instill codes inside of not only our DNA, but inside of like patterns that are repeated, specifically in hair, and patterns that are repeated in our life, as far as like transitional patterns, having highs and lows and having to recycle throughout them if you don't learn the lesson and things like that. And so when we were looking at, or this is the part of I guess the presentation where is that like we're not saying that these particular quotes are the ones that we thought of when I saw the work, but this is how you can apply it. Like if you're reading these particular works, then if you went to Here, There, Everywhere, it would make sense to kind of pair either one of them with. And so, Dartricia, can you, I guess, tell me more about the particular quote that kind of grabbed you when you saw Coded by Jasmine and Chandler?
Yeah, I'm like, I got all the books here, so let me choose the correct one and actually read it from. So that's page 122 from Spill by Alexis Pauline Gumbs. So she writes here, try to open the hope with braids and with rope and with water and soap. Try to trust out the truth. Try to piecemeal the piece stitch together, some sleep and relax for the road, for the real stuff. And I'll just leave it there because we could read this whole book. I could read this whole book aloud to y'all. But I mean, when we talked about putting the show together, and we talked about like Chandler's piece being like a pathway, and how that was going to be like the transitional piece into that room, which leads to the rest of Jasmine's work. I just think this quote just really spoke to me. And she also writes in here with braids. And I think it just did it for me. And that's not the only quote. I mean, there was a quote from Wayward Lives that also I feel like really spoke to me when I looked at that piece. And I don't think that anything has to be verbatim when I'm thinking about like books in relationship with visual arts. It's just more of like the way that people talk about like how art makes them feel is that literally like, how did the art make me feel? And then like, how did this book, this text, this quote make me feel? And like that quote spoke to me when I saw that piece.
Yeah. And I think specifically for me, it was more so that like that last line of like, or the last word of like truth. And so within like these coded structures and like patterns that we've like been passing down to our communities and within our familiar structures, like we've always been trying to instill the truth of like our culture in these things, and like trying to kind of like put these like smoke and mirrors over them so that it can be protected. And I think I've had a few conversations about how just like even thinking about braiding and how that protects our hair and how that translates over into just protecting the truth of like what your hair means and what it can do and has the power to do. It can translate into so many different ways of like protection of truth of Black people and like who they are innately.
Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next piece, which is one of my favorites. I love all of them though. But when I've read this quote, I think when both of us read this quote, it really was like a oof, my heart. So do you want to speak about Alex's piece, Call Your Ancestors 5?
Yeah, Calling Ancestors 5 is a 3-part piece that sits on top of each other. As you see in the picture here, Alex is straightening it out, but it has like its own lean on the axis if you step back, and that's like a nod at the DNA structure. And then there's 108 faces around the entire piece of Black women ranging from the ages 2 to 80. If I did get that wrong, I do apologize, Alex. So all 108 of those faces are different. If you are able to look closely or come to the exhibition before it closes. And it's just specifically a piece about like just having access to information that has been passed down through your DNA structure, and thinking about how you can not only call on that, but how do you like utilize that within your own like timeline and time frame.
Yes. And like, we're going to stick with our trusty text of Spill. I'm going to read the quote here. Y'all just tell Alexis that I love her. Once the sky was low, you could taste stars singeing your hair. You, if you walked around unthinking, once black holes were a literal liability for the living, absent-minded. Once the ancestor stars were not just nightlights to wish upon, they were warnings saying, mind your direction, you might get burnt. I was just like, wow, because she literally named her piece Call Your Ancestors.
Yeah.
And like Alexis is speaking directly to, calling on your ancestors and like your ancestors warning you to mind your directions, you might get burnt.
Because like I think like even not saying it's become like this like mainstream type of thing to like calling your ancestor or be in practice of like convening with your ancestors or ancestral veneration. I think that everyone has their own like way of speaking to their familiar ancestors and how they connect with them. But when you do find that way, you have to understand that some of the things that they might be telling you might be warnings, and they're trying to protect you from things that, even though they may seem shiny and good for you, it may not be the way that you're supposed to be going. And so I think a lot of us come through those instances where it's like, that was trying to protect me. They were trying to do something, and I didn't want to listen, or like, I'm grateful for that one, you know. So yeah, definitely that particular one was like, you only need one line, really. Like,
Sierra don't advocate for people not finishing their book, but yes, one line can really take you there. Okay, so we're gonna go on to our last piece. Thank you, ER. So do you want to speak to Nutrice's pieces?
Yeah, resist. Resist, Rebirth, and Revival are by Natrice Miller. She's a photographer, like I said, here in Atlanta, and mostly known for her documentary and travel work. But I had seen these pieces. I believe I had scrolled her Instagram a bit, and I had seen these down below, and they were being showcased in. I'm not gonna even like try to remember where they're being showcased, but she showcased these once, like 2D. And so when we did the site visit, and we were thinking about how to present the artist's work, and I was like looking at the space, and I was like, I would really love for one of the artists to kind of explore what a three-dimensional piece would look like, or what would a 2D like floating piece look like on fabric. And so Natrice like stepped up to that plate and was like, I would want to like figure that out. And it just paired well with those works, as far as like they're like real like flowy and wild and free, and just give you that and when they're in this particular presentation, it gives you an idea of like how much space they take up, and just allow them to like breathe and be in the space rather than like connected to a wall. And so I think it was the way that we decided to go for this particular presentation and like site specific installation was perfect. And so the pieces talk about perception and how women are perceived. And so the woman in the portraits, she has tattoos and dreads, and people think that she's like this strong woman. Well, she is a strong woman, and that comes across. But in her like everyday state, she's very like calm and meek and not shy, but just very soft and like feminine. And so she has never had the like, not even privilege, but it's just that like a lot of people like have these perceptions of you that don't really allow you to be your whole self in spaces, because they're like projecting who you should be onto you. And so you kind of like either make yourself small, or don't really present in the way that you want to, just because it may be combative, or you have to answer questions. And so I think in this particular session that Natrice was having with, I believe it's her sister, she was saying, just be free, just be wild, and be your whole self in this moment, and allow that to come across on the photographs. And so that was also like paired with a very like flow freeing dress, and the dress is actually pink. So the color version of the print is the true version. And so just being able for her to express that femininity and that softness in that moment, and rejecting and refusing everyone else's projection, was probably a big like revealing moment, not only in her life, but Natrice being able to memorialize that for her.
Yes, thank you. That even before I even get into like the quote that we have here, that reminds me of Jamila Woods' song. I can't remember the title, but she has this line. It's like, "Hotep, step from around me. I am not your what is it? I'm not your queenum. I'm not. I can't remember the line, but this idea of like perception and like people just like assigning these things to you. And so the quote reads, it's from How We Get Free and it's about the Combahee River Collective. But we reject pedestals, queenhood, and walking 10 paces behind. To be recognized as human, lovingly human, is enough. And I think it says enough. Like, I think these pieces, they stand alone so well. I think the way that y'all decided to present them was amazing, and like the way that you just even describe them is amazing. And so like when I saw them in person and the actual pictures, but really in person, I immediately thought about this text, and this is like the conclusion that I came to. I'm like, this is what I feel when I see this, and like when I read this, I see those images now.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I was speaking to this last night, was that like, even though I haven't really connected with the Combahee River Collective, and I've been reading more Wayward Lives, Wayward Lives talks a lot about refusal and just like the act of like rejection, and how like Black women have been doing that, and how they just that like light bulb moment that happens like in their lives, to where is it like, I no longer have to prescribe to what people are perceiving of me, is like the most like beautiful moment in these women's lives, and I think is what I was trying to like encapsulate within the entire exhibition.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we are going to move into the title, and if y'all have any questions, you can ask them in the ask a question box, and I will read them to Sierra after at the end. So go ahead and do that, and then yeah, Sierra, if you will get into this title here, there, everywhere, and actually before you get started, ER asked, why did you decide to have all the titles be lowercase, not capitalized? So can you actually answer that question before you describe the title?
Yeah. So of course, Bell Hooks is Bible. So everything that she does is like, I have to like follow, because, you know, discipleship. So, so she, I don't know, what, do you know her government name? It's not.
I don't remember. ER, can you type it in the chat, because I know you know.
So Bell Hooks is just her pen name, and so, but she particularly, yes, Gloria Jean Watkins. There we go, people.
Yes, thank
We are
you.
collective. We work together. Yeah, thank you for that, Grace. Yes, so Gloria Jean is her real name, but Bell Hooks is the name that she goes by, and in particular, it's all in lowercase, and because it's mostly denouncing the English language and the constructs around English language, and how that has been like colonialized other tongues, specifically African American tongues, to where it's like when you're thinking about African American vernacular English, even though it's still tied to English, it has its own grammatical tenses and things like that. And so that kind of brings us like full circle back to like my just love for language, and how I'm always thinking deeply about language, and how it operates within not only in our lives but in the systems. And so denouncing English as my formal language because I'm tired of it. And the way that I can do that is just not adhering to its grammatical structures by capitalizing things such as the title.
I appreciate that as someone who's really terrible at grammar but really loves literature.
Things don't have to be capitalized. That's just a social construct.
So yeah, get into this title, Here, There, Everywhere. I love it.
Here, There, Everywhere is a play on past, present, and future. And so again, going back to grammatical tenses and nodding to Tina Camp, is our future is something that that must happen. And so within thinking about thinking about that, it's like everywhere is almost that like omnipotence or omniscience like thing that you ascend to, and there is your current reality, and here can also be your current reality or your past. And these don't necessarily happen linear. They can happen within each other at different times, before each other, after each other, before each other, and just understanding that like timelines merge across. And so while I can have like transcended to everywhere, I can always go back to there. Or if I transcended to there, I can always go back to here or here and go everywhere. And so I also like dimensions and thinking about time and working with time and how people um, just experience time. And that kind of gets into my archiving practice. We don't have enough time to talk about that. So, yeah, if you want to talk about time with me, I have all of it because it doesn't exist. And and I think I wanted to give that to Black women and give that to people to be able to think about the time that they have and not necessarily compartmentalize their different realities, but think about how there's multitudes of different timelines that you're able to experience, whether that be your familial timelines, your friendship timelines, or the timelines that you may have not encountered and have been able to experience those through different portals or archival information. So that's a part I'm still really exploring. But when I was reading M Archive, we had read that particular line at the beginning of it, and it led us to pedagogies, which is saying being everywhere was the only way. They reasoned to evade capture and to ensure the permanence of change. And that one line was just like, I ain't gotta say nothing else. I don't like I could have just like backspaced the entire statement and just put that on there.
Right. And that was like in pedagogics was the text that you didn't have. And it was so like Alexis had a footnote, and so then like I found the actual text of that. I just want to highlight Ann Collins Smith. Shout out to her for Spelman. She wrote in the chat here, here, there, everywhere is also an exhaust song covered by Roberta Flack.
You know I love music, man.
Look at that research. Look at her knowing. And she dropped a link. So after our chat, everybody should click on that link, especially us, to listen to the song. And so, Sierra, can you close us out with the text from M Archive?
Yeah. And so M Archive it's just you can sit with it for days, but in the Archive of Fire, there's this particular page on page 91, and it starts in the center of her chest, the fist-sized muscle was turning back to the carbon again, burning black and then blacker like it wanted to be diamond. The scroll had said her heart would change, but she never imagined it meant this. Here, on the planet of sulfur and memories, she leaned her cracked back on the hot and broken ground. Was this lava or her blood, volcano or revelation? What was she breathing would not have been called air, except that it was everywhere, except that she was breathing it. There was never rain, but she waited for lightning to find her, the mercury of her veins aligning with the shock of being here after everything and before whatever. Her heart was accelerated cold, growing deep, dark, and sharp. She kept on breathing, prostrate, burning, knowing soon it would be clear and unbreakable, her beautiful blackening heart.
And I also want to uplift that Juana wrote in the chat that like this reminds her of Afrofuturism. And I definitely read M Archive. So that's M Archive After the End of the World by Alexis Pauline Gumbs, published by Duke University Press, which I think most of these books came from Duke University Press. So shout out to them.
If Duke wants to send me to grad school, I'll take it.
But Juana talks about how this reminds her, like even the show reminds her of like Afrofuturism, which is really funny that she says that because I think in the beginning of us trying to put the show together and like the proposal, we were really thinking about Afrofuturism, but we didn't want to say that explicitly.
Yeah.
And like, I think M Archive really, if you've read it, please make time to read it, because she does some amazing work in this text. And then if you buy M Archive, you have to get Pedagogies of Crossing so that you can go and match up the footnotes, because it's honestly mind blowing to me. And like that title is amazing. We actually have a question here from Stephen. How important is comprehension regarding literature and art for you and people you suggest reading and art exhibits to? Example, if you suggest something and the person is struggling to grasp it completely in order to appreciate, dislike, or critique it fully, are you disappointed, or are you just glad they gave it a chance? Did they give it a chance? Ooh, I got so many thoughts about
that. I think with anything, it has to be like you have to meet them where they are in their practice, but in their practice of reading and in their practice of viewing art. I think coming from so I came from a traditional art background, being like going to school for art. So I can't like expect everyone to know who Carrie Mae Weems is, or know who Lorna Simpson is, or know who Latoya Ruby Frazier is when I call out their names like immediately. But I can respect them and be able to give them that information. And if they take it, then they do with what they will with it. And hopefully they come back and be like, hey, Sierra, I saw Latoya's work over in XYZ gallery, or she was up in Detroit doing something or did an activation. And that made me think of whatever book you gave to me like 5 years ago. Like, I feel like that is a win for me. I don't necessarily like critique them in that moment, or feel like I have to disengage with them because they aren't able to have that conversation at that time. I think that's where I kind of like met Dartricia at too, was that like I wasn't expecting her to know everything about art, and I didn't necessarily have to speak to her in art terms as far as like all of the elements and the vocabulary of art. It was very like very on a just an informal level. I mean, while I hope that she will become like an art critic and start writing about Jasmine's work, we're gonna get there when we get there, right? And so
this trio.
you have to give that grace to people, and just continue being of resource. I think to speaking to that, Stephen. And if you are looking for more critique and looking for more people to speak on a higher level, then we're always here for you.
You know, Stephen's question bring up for me a couple of things. One is that in some of our earlier conversations, that was like a question that I had for Sierra. I was like, because I understand myself to be an art collector. My partner is an artist. And so like, he understands all the things. I'm like, what's a shadow? What are you talking about when you say this light? But I also like had like these critiques for people's art, and I didn't know how to fully articulate it because I didn't feel like I had the vocabulary. And so I didn't feel, and people asked me my opinion because they understood me to be an art collector, but I was just like, I think that's cute. I think that's pretty. And so I bought it. I can't really tell you why I bought it. And that also came into this idea of like of reading and art for us, because I understood books like really well, but I really didn't understand art in the way that someone like Sierra or like Jasmine does, because I'm not an artist. I can appreciate visual arts, but I didn't feel like I could really speak to it. And something that Bell Hooks writes in the beginning of Art on My Mind is talking about like how you don't have to know everything to engage with it. You can come to art, you can come to literature, you can come to all these things, as long as you are like showing up, bringing yourself, and engaging with it. You're already doing the work. You're asking the question of yourself and the things that you're engaging with. And like, you'll get there, you'll learn. People assume that I like know all these things because I read these books, and I'm like, I don't even know where to put a comma in a sentence. So
I guess also to follow up with that, to your point, Dartricia, I think the part that we were missing, I guess now that we're in like pandemic, was being able to engage with the art in that sense of me going to the galleries with you and helping you navigate like what the art was saying, and not saying, but like how to just read the composition and be in place with the art and be able to just have enough time to sit there and like, okay, this is why it may feel good to you because she's left centered or she's right centered, or they don't have a lot of negative space over her head, so you're able to sit eye level with the portrait. And having that conversation with you like that, and helping you pull out exactly what you're drawn to, rather than like reprimanding you for saying it looks good, or I think that I like it because it's this color. But like just bouncing back and forth between the formal and the informal, I think has been a really good exercise that we were able to do while going to those galleries.
Yes, and again, like just to reiterate, making time and space. So like often I found myself just like, oh, I'm gonna go to this art show and I'm gonna just like scan the room and like I'm good, or like I saw this piece, I'm gonna buy this piece and then I'm good, I'm leaving. But like I think I got in that practice just from going to the Romare Bearden exhibit at the Time Museum, that I was actually just like sitting there and like, you know, feeling all the feelings and like thinking about all the things. And like sometimes it's like one of the times that when I took my journal, what you gotta say?
When we went to the Rubel Museum and we sat in Amar, what is his name? Amar.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about because I almost cried.
He literally sat on the floor, like, and we were just like in awe of his work. Like, we didn't have the words at that point, but it's just like when just being able to sit with like that scale of work inside of a particular building like that and just have space to sit with it is an experience that like you can't even like replicate.
And when we sat there in front of Kehinde Wiley's piece in the Rubel, I think we sat there for 30 minutes.
Y'all follow me on Instagram and I'll put these pictures up on my story so y'all can see how we just sat there for an hour in front of Kehinde Wiley's work. Like literally just like looking at this like tattoo that he painted on this man's arm. Like
I think we spent a very long time on the tattoo and just like thinking about, and I learned about shadows, y'all.
It was some shadows. It was some shadows in Kehinde Wiley's piece. He can paint some shadows.
Yes, he can. Okay, so in the interest of time, I don't see any more questions, so I'm assuming that y'all are good on that front. A lot of y'all follow us on social media, so y'all can ask y'all questions whenever you want. So Sierra has given us a couple of like what to do next, like some call to actions. And then we'll talk about some of your programming that you have coming up. So
yes.
You want to talk?
Are you gonna start building your library? I am a one-liner aficionado. Buy as many books as you want, and read them later. Create a shared calendar and put events, like online events like this, on your friend's calendar and tell them to join you in these digital rooms, and get a reprieve from all these virtual spaces that you don't necessarily want to be in. I definitely opted out of the presidential debate last night, and sign up for newsletters that you want to keep in contact with. So like my newsletter, you'll be getting something this week. But galleries, they're also putting out things and trying to get more back in the circulation of giving you places to be. And so yeah, thank y'all for coming. Thank you, Dartricia, for being.
Wait, we need your church announcements, friends.
Oh, my church announcements.
We need those.
Yes, the church announcements, ER.
On the next slide. The ER abandoned us.
We having little technical difficulties with our what do you call it, audio-visual department in the back of the church.
Can you not see it?
We can see it now.
Okay, good.
They be up and
sorry.
They lose connection. So that's
So tell us about the upcoming programs that you have around the show. So this conversation tonight is the first iteration, the first program around the show Here, There, Everywhere. And then Sierra's gonna give us the rest that y'all can plug into.
My church announcements. I've been waiting on these all night. And so Many Women Talk is the artist talk. So we'll be back in another digital room. It'll be on Zoom. And you can get that link from signing up on Mint's Eventbrite. And you'll get that like the day before. And then if you are familiar with the Free Black Women's Library in New York, they do have a chapter here in Atlanta. And so we're doing a small intimate book swap with them on Sunday from 12 to 5 p.m. And so you can bring a book and take a book. And they're also going to do like a really cool installation. Fun fact, that particular photo on the flyer is one of my photographs that I took for this it's an old thing that I did, but it's also it was a visual poem to my grandmother and her things before she passed away. And Take Care of Your Plants, Bree of Ear Garden. You may have heard of her giving away like hundreds of plants in the West End for free to Black people, social distance and safe. So she's going to do a plant booth at Mint on October 8th. And she's going to be giving you advice for your houseplants. So you can bring your houseplants or buy a houseplant before you get there and then bring it and ask her questions about it. And a little bird told me that she will have at least 40 to 50 plants to give away. So get your ticket and make sure that you are on time and not late, even though time does not exist. You still got to wait for it. And also, the show will be on view, physically on view until October 10th. And WANA, the exhibition will be online virtually. You can see the pictures and things on my site on buildyourarchive.com right now. And then I'm working on getting a virtual situation up for you all for that. And also, all this programming takes place in the first week of October, so the Sunshine Choir will not be performing on Fourth Sunday.
That was good. That was good. Thank you so much, Sierra. I really appreciate you for even inviting me in to think about and help put together this show. And I'm so glad that I'm your first stop, your first program to talk about books and art. And we might do some other explorations of this idea of like reading art, because I got a bunch of those ideas.
I know.
And ER, thank you so much for hosting us.
Yes. You're so welcome. This was great. I want to encourage folks. So you see their list right there. If you click this teal button at the bottom of the screen, that'll take you to the active links where you can buy the books from the bookshelf. So if there's anything that you have not read and you just want to get started with one line, you can. Or you can read the whole book. We are happy either way. The other thing it's my job to do is to encourage folks to make a donation to our nonprofit. So Dartricia is the assistant director of our nonprofit Charis Circle. All of our events are individually donor sponsored, which means that we rely on the community to make stuff like this happen. So I know everybody's financial situation is different right now because of COVID and everything, but $1, $5, everything really helps us. So we are grateful to you for considering that. And we hope that if you are new to Charis and you are here because you know Sierra or you love art and you want to know more about literary community, we would love for you to just check out our calendar at charisbooksandmore.com. We do online virtual events almost every day of the week.
Yes.
Almost. And Dartricia does all of the beautiful social media graphics. And so we would love for y'all to be a part of it. So thank you both for being here.
I would like to uplift one thing.
Yes, do it.
We haven't in the interest of like the conversation around the church and the chorus and the church announcements, we have a program for the Secret Lives of Church Ladies. It's a short story collection, and I just finished the book, and y'all. Is that event? I think it's October 13th.
Yeah, I'm gonna drop it in the chat right now so folks can just go through and get on.
I need to get that book.
That is one to come to. I'll bring it back. I'll leave it on your doorstep. Yes, that is definitely one to come to. Sorry for interrupting you, ER, but yes.
No, it's great. The other event that we want folks to know about is our Atlanta Pride event with Pamela Sneed. Her new book is called Funeral Diva. It's about coming out and coming of age in the 80s during the AIDS crisis. And it's a beautiful book. We're really, really excited about that. So that first link is to the Secret Lives of Church Ladies. And then I'm going to hit you with this other link for the Pamela Sneed event. She's going to be in conversation with Teresa Davis, who, of course, is local to Atlanta and is sort of our spoken word poet laureate of Atlanta. Yes. So come hit that up too.
And Pamela Sneed does work in both the visual and literary arts, so it's timely.
Yes. Yeah, and this memoir is like essays, poetry. It's a really cool sort of assemblage of words. So it's similar to visual art in some ways.
My final church announcement is shout out to my mom and my uncle for being here. I appreciate y'all. I see y'all in the comments doing things. So I know y'all are probably like in the other room, but it's okay.
It's recorded.
Okay. There's a one up there. My partner, who is also in the chat, is upstairs shouting. I think we can let the people go, but thank y'all so much for coming. This was amazing. Thank you, ER. Thank you, Sierra. I'll see y'all on the internet.
Yes, stay safe, everybody.